Welcome to Kids Stories, Chapter Books, and more. Today's chapter book is The Boy Who Was Left Behind, written by Geeta V. Reddy, narrated by Susie Hackle. Copyright 2021, Geeta V. Reddy. Chapter 1, Telephone Call. Later, Vimal always wondered what had made him sit up in bed, wide awake in the middle of the night. It wasn't a bad dream. He remembered the time when he was younger and would wake up because of a bad dream. His grandmother would give him some water and sit beside him until he went back to sleep. That was why she slept in the bed beside his and kept a soft light switched on throughout the night. But the night when Vimal woke up, his grandmother, he called her Amma, was not in her bed. The bed was empty. He opened his mouth to call out to her, but something made him tiptoe to the door and peep into the living room. Amma was there, sitting in a chair. Her back was to him, and she was crying. Vimal could hear the sobs that shook her shoulders. As he stood behind the curtain and watched, she went to the telephone. Something was wrong. He could tell by the way she walked. Her shoulders were stooped, and she was dragging her feet. Vimal was frightened. He knew something terrible had happened. He wanted to run into Amma's arms, but she was crying. He had never seen her or any grown-up cry, and that made him freeze. He heard her speaking on the telephone. She had called Ravi uncle. He was her nephew. She always called him if she needed anything. Vimal tried to understand what she was saying, but he found it difficult because she was crying while talking. Most of her words were lost in her sobs. Vimal couldn't understand her. Perhaps Uncle couldn't either. That's why she was repeating herself. Rajan's friend called from London. He spoke from a hospital. Rajan and Nanda met with an accident today. Rajan didn't survive. He died on the spot. Nanda is in the hospital. Her condition is serious. The doctors don't know if she will live. Poor Vimal. Poor child. What will I tell him? Vimal went back to bed and covered his face. He could hear Amma's voice as if from a distance and the sound of moaning. When he heard her come in, he lay as still as he could. She sat down on his bed and placed her palm on his head and prayed softly. Vigneshwara, keep Vimal and Nanda safe. Don't let Vimal be orphaned. The doorbell rang. Amma left the room. She bolted the door from outside as she went out. She didn't want him to know anything about the tragedy. Vimal guessed that Ravi uncle and Nisha auntie had come. He heard the murmur of their voices, but he didn't try to listen at the door. How could his father be dead? His parents were coming back to India for good. His father had quit his job in London and found another in Mumbai. Only yesterday Amma had teased him he would forget her soon. You will go to live with your parents in Mumbai and forget your grandmother. No, Amma, he had said. We'll ask Daddy to take a job here in Jaipur. We'll all live together. Vimal shut his eyes and tried to remember how his parents looked, but their faces were a blur. Amma had told him he was born in London. His other grandmother, his daddy's mother, had looked after him. After her death, Mummy and Daddy had brought him to India, to Amma. They couldn't look after him because they were too busy with their jobs. That was why he was living with Amma from when he was 2 years old. His parents had come to see him when he was 4, but he remembered little from that visit. When he was 6, they had come to attend Ravi uncle's wedding. Amma had told him they would take him to London. He still remembered being both happy and sad. Happy that he would live with his parents, but sad that he would leave his grandmother. But his parents had stayed for a few days and had left without him. During their short stay, Relatives who were attending the wedding filled the house. Everyone had made much of him, but he had clung to Amma and followed her like a shadow. When their visit ended, he was relieved to go back to his usual life with Amma. Her mother had been sad to leave. "I wish I could stay for another month," she had said. "We are strangers to Vimal. This short visit hasn't brought us any closer." "It's better this way," his grandmother had answered. "You know how sensitive he is. It's better if he doesn't get too attached to you. You can decide what to do after 2 years. Vimal will be 8 then, and old enough to understand. It won't matter if you take him with you to London or leave him here." Vimal went to his writing table and opened the drawer without making any sound. He took out the photos that had come recently. In the first photograph, his father was laughing and holding up his fingers in a victory sign. Vimal flipped over the photograph to read the words that he knew by heart. "We'll be with you soon. Love you, son." "No, you won't be with me," Vimal said, gazing into his father's laughing face. Tears welled up in his eyes, and soon he was crying into his pillow. His father, his daddy, was gone. He would not come. Ever. Vimal wept until the lump in his throat didn't hurt any longer, and then he slept. Chapter 2. Left Behind. Amma woke up Vimal in the morning. Her eyes were red and puffy. She told him to take a bath and get dressed. Vimal was surprised. It was a Sunday and school was closed. Amma usually allowed him to take a bath after breakfast when he did not have to go to school. By the time he was dressed, breakfast was on the table. "Amma, I'm not hungry. I can't eat," he said. "Try to eat something," Amma said, and turned away to wipe her eyes. Vimal's throat felt tight. He felt as if he wouldn't be able to swallow anything. But Amma would worry if he did not eat. He bit into the apple and chewed it slowly. "Vimal," Amma said, "I've packed your things. You'll stay with Ravi for a few days. I have to go to London." "Why, Amma?" "Your parents need me," she said without looking at him. "I'm leaving for Mumbai in an hour. Your father's brother, Enel, will meet me in Mumbai. He will accompany me to London. I know you are a good boy and will not give Nisha any trouble." Vimal waited for his grandmother to tell him about his father. When she fell silent, he didn't ask her. He knew she would make up something, and he didn't want that. Ravi and Nisha came in. "Ravi will drive me to the airport," Amma said. "You must go with Nisha to their place." "Lucky you had your visa renewed last year," Ravi told Vimal's grandmother as he lifted her suitcase. Amma hugged Vimal and followed Ravi to the waiting car. Vimal wanted to run after her. He wanted to hold her and cry and tell her he knew about his father, and would she please take him along. He would have done that before, but in one night he had grown up. When his grandmother looked at him from the car, smiling in spite of the sorrow in her face, he smiled and waved her goodbye. Nisha drew him close. "Ravi will bring your things over in the evening. You can come with him and then choose whatever you want. For now, pick a book or a toy." Vimal shook his head. "Do you have homework to finish? Shall we take your school bag?" Nisha asked. Vimal shook his head again. Nisha picked up a video game from the table. "This one is new, isn't it? Bring it along. We'll play it together." On the way to her house, Nisha stopped at the bookshop and asked Vimal to choose a book. When he stood beside her silently, she bought 2 comics. "Here, hold these," she said. Vimal took the comics without even glancing at them. Ravi and Nisha lived on the next street. Vimal was often at their house, playing in the garden or watching cartoons. "Vimal," Nisha said, unlocking the gate, You left a ball here last week. I'll get it for you." Vimal slowly went to the swing. It was his favorite spot in the garden. He loved swinging as high as he could. He sat down on the swing and folded his hands in his lap. Nisha brought the ball and also a glass of cool lemonade. When Vimal shook his head, she placed it beside him and patted his arm. "I have work to do in the house. Play or do whatever you wish until it's time for lunch." Vimal continued to sit on the swing. The comic book lay open on his lap, and the ball rested in the grass. "Amma should have taken me with her," he kept thinking. "Mummy is in the hospital. Is she going to die? Maybe she's already dead. Amma didn't tell me about Daddy. How will I know about Mummy?" Nisha came out to call him for lunch. She was surprised to see him still on the swing. "Why are you sitting in the sun? You should have moved into the shade. And what is this? You didn't even drink the lemonade. Doesn't matter. Let's have lunch. You must be hungry. Your grandmother told me you hardly had any breakfast." Vimal followed Nisha into the house. When she asked him to wash his hands before eating, he said, "I don't want to eat." "Try to eat a little. I've made your favorite egg curry and rice." "Later, please." Nisha touched his forehead. "Vimal, you've got a fever. Go and lie down. I'll bring you some milk." Vimal swallowed the paracetamol that Nisha gave him and drank the milk. His head was aching. He closed his eyes. Nisha pulled the curtains close and left the room. Silent tears trickled down from Vimal's eyes and wet the pillow until he slowly fell asleep. Much later, Ravi gently shook him awake. Vimal's eyelids felt so heavy that he kept them closed. He recognized Dr. Rao's voice. "Sleep will help him," the doctor said. "I've checked his pulse and temperature. The fever has come down. But Vimal is very sensitive. I remember what his condition was when I saw him for the first time. You must try to keep him happy. See that he doesn't miss his grandmother too much." After Dr. Rao left, Ravi and Nisha stayed in the room. "Do you think he knows about his father?" Nisha asked Ravi softly. "He doesn't. He was sleeping when the call came. Amma didn't tell him anything. She doesn't want him to know. That's why she doesn't want us to tell anyone. I've already told her neighbors that Rajan and Nanda are both in the hospital. It's for the best. Vimal won't be able to take the shock without Amma. You should have seen how upset he was this morning. It'll be better if we don't send him to school for a day or two." "We can't make him miss school," Ravi said. "He's a smart kid. He'll catch up easily. I'll help him." Ravi agreed. "We'll take him around, entertain him, and give him whatever he wants. We'll keep him engaged so that he'll get used to Amma's absence." "Rajan and Nanda were so eager to see him," Nisha said with a sigh. "I spoke to Nanda only 3 days ago. I can't believe so much has changed in such a short while." Chapter 3. A Long Wait. Nisha told Vimal he needn't go to school and said, "Let's watch some cartoon videos." Vimal did not want to watch cartoons. He did not want to watch anything. But he knew if he refused, Nisha Auntie would try to engage him in some other activity. So he sat back with his eyes on the large television screen until Nisha left him alone. Dinner that night was at a Chinese restaurant. Vimal tried to pretend that he was having a good time. But he had no appetite. He could not stop thinking about his parents and barely spoke a word. The next day, Ravi took him to Dr. Rao, who prescribed a tonic. 2 days later, Vimal started going to school. Usually he and his friend Sandeep walked to school together. Now he preferred to be alone. "Why don't you wait for me these days?" Sandeep demanded, catching up with him a week later. Vimal shook his head and continued walking. "Why are you staying at your uncle's place?" Sandeep asked. Shall I come over in the evening? I love that swing. We're going out. 2 other boys joined them, putting an end to Sandeep's questions. Vimal let them walk ahead and went back to his thoughts. His grandmother had left more than a week ago. She would definitely have called Ravi uncle. The call must have come when he was at school. Perhaps it was a late-night call. Maybe his mother was dead too. Finally, one morning, Amma called a little before he left for school. She asked about his health and school and said, "Your mother is still in the hospital. I will stay here for some more weeks." "And Daddy?" There was silence, and then Anil uncle came on the line. "We're attending to both Mummy and Daddy. Be good. Your grandmother will be back as soon as she can." Vimal was often lost in his own thoughts and paid little attention in class. The other children left him alone because he no longer joined them in their games. When his grades plunged, his teacher scolded him and told him to ask his father to speak to her. Vimal's eyes filled with tears. The boy sitting next to him said, "Ma'am, his father is in London." "That's nothing to be upset about. Vimal, ask your guardian to see me tomorrow." The next day, after Ravi met her, she announced in class, "Children, Vimal's parents are in the hospital. Let's pray for their recovery." The class stood up. Vimal wanted to shout that it was no use, that his father was dead and no prayer would bring him back. During recess, the boys crowded around him, asking questions. "What happened to your parents? What are their injuries? How did the accident happen?" One boy asked, "Vimal, why don't you live with your parents in London? Why do you live with your grandmother?" A girl said, "I can't imagine living without my parents. How can you stay away from them?" The children forgot all about the accident and started telling one another how their parents doted on them and how much they loved their parents. Vimal listened to their stories and was struck by how different the other parents were. His parents had never loved him like that. "That's why they left me with Amma," he thought. "Raju's uncle lives in London, and his children live with him. Why was I left behind? Mummy doesn't love me, and Daddy didn't care for me. Only Amma loves me." 3 months later, Amma told Vimal what he had been longing to hear. "We are coming back to India. We'll start tomorrow." "Will you be home tomorrow, Amma?" "No, dearest. We're going directly to Kerala to see a famous Ayurvedic doctor, or Vaidya as he is called. He's our last hope for your mother. Nanda's injuries have healed, but she is paralyzed. The doctors haven't been able to help her. That's why we are going to try Ayurvedic healing. But don't worry, your mother will get well. We mustn't lose hope." After the call, Vimal took out his dictionary and found the word paralyzed. It meant a nervous condition that causes impairment, especially loss of motor function. He then looked up impairment and motor functions. Paralyzed meant not being able to move. His mother couldn't move. So was she in a wheelchair? How would she get into the airplane if she was in a wheelchair? Vimal slowly started taking some interest in his studies. He still didn't laugh and play like he used to, but he was not as lost as before. His grandmother called him at least once a week from Kerala. The Vaidya was treating his mother with herbs and medicated oil. The treatment was slow, and his grandmother couldn't tell him when they would be able to return home. He longed so much for his grandmother's return that sometimes he got angry with his mother. She had sent him away from her when he was 2, and now she had taken Amma away too. Vimal has settled down. He has stopped pining for his grandmother, Ravi told Nisha. I don't know. He's not the same cheerful and outgoing child he was. His heart isn't in his studies or in play, even though he does whatever we ask him to do. I feel as if he's angry and upset and hiding it. That's bad for a child. I'll be glad when Amma will return. I think he'll open up only with her. Vimal's annual exams got over. He passed with average grades. His grandmother called to say that she and Nanda would be back in Jaipur in a week. Vimal became a little lively. He helped Nisha to clean his grandmother's house and stock it with provisions. Chapter 4. Still Alone. The day of Amma's arrival dawned. Vimal wanted to go to the airport, but his uncle refused to let him come along. Vimal was disappointed, but still happy that finally his grandmother was coming home. "How much longer?" he asked Nisha every 5 minutes. Finally, when the waiting became intolerable, he went out of the house and started pacing the pavement. An ambulance entered the lane. Vimal glanced at it and looked away. The ambulance stopped beside him, and Ravi uncle jumped out. He went to the back door of the ambulance and helped Amma down. She saw Vimal and smiled. Her face was more lined than he remembered. Vimal paused for a moment before rushing to her. His grandmother caught him in her embrace. She hugged him close and kissed his forehead. 2 men dressed in white uniforms brought out a stretcher from the ambulance with a woman lying on it. As they walked up to the house, Amma turned Vimal's face away so that he couldn't see the stretcher. After the men went into the house, she took his face in her hands and nodded sadly. "That was your mother, my daughter." Vimal walked beside Amma with her arm around his shoulders. She walked slowly, as if she was exhausted. She even leaned a little on Vimal. Nisha had already prepared a bedroom for Nanda. It was her old room. After the ambulance men laid Nanda on the bed and left, Nisha adjusted the pillows and covered Nanda with a sheet. Amma sat down beside the bed and took Nanda's hand. "You are home now, my dear girl. Vimal is standing beside you. He'll hold your hand now." She nodded to Vimal. "Take Mummy's hand." Vimal stopped beside his grandmother's chair and stared at the woman who was lying on the bed. She did not move at all. Even her hand resting on Grandma was still. She was like nothing he had imagined or seen. Though he had looked up the meaning of paralyzed in the dictionary, he hadn't understood what it meant. "Vimal, take your mother's hand," Nisha said. Vimal's mind screamed in protest. The woman wasn't his mother. She couldn't be. Even her face was different. Though she had the same eyes, nose, and mouth, they looked like they belonged to someone else. "Nanda, Vimal is here. He'll hold your hand," his grandmother said again. Vimal unwillingly took his mother's hand. It felt cold and strange and heavy. She did not turn to look at him. He waited, staring at her, because he did not know what else to do. Then he removed his hand and watched it fall back limply on the bed. He turned and ran out of the room. His grandmother and Nisha came out after him. "Vimal, your mother is completely paralyzed. She can neither move nor speak. We think she can hear because the brain scans show some response to sound, but we aren't sure." "What a terrible thing to happen," Nisha said, wiping her eyes. "After so many years of worrying, they could finally plan a future with Vimal. What can one say? Nothing is certain in life." Amma sighed and sat down in the nearest chair. She took Vimal's hand and drew him close. "Vimal, I'm sorry I had to leave you so suddenly and for so many months. But I got a telephone call from London. Nanda and Rajan were excited to be coming home to you. They were out shopping for gifts. While they were returning home, a car crashed into theirs. The driver was drunk. Amma drew Vimal closer. Your father died on the spot. I know, Vimal said and sobbed. All the tears he had kept locked up started flowing in his grandmother's arms. Amma continued to hold him until his sobs lessened. Who told you? When did you find out? She asked. I know since the night you got the call. I woke up and heard you crying. Then you were talking on the phone with Ravi uncle. I guessed something was bothering Vimal, Nisha told Amma. But I didn't suspect this. Ravi thought he was missing you, but I knew something was troubling him. I should have tried harder to find out. You're a brave child, Amma said. I'm proud of you. I'm also sorry that I didn't trust you. I should have told you. At least you would have grieved openly. Nisha and Ravi would have comforted you. I thought you wouldn't be able to bear your father's death without me to comfort you. I didn't want you to suffer alone. That's why I didn't tell you. Amma wiped her eyes and continued. Poor Nanda, she was thrown out of the car. She had many fractures and her spine was also injured. The broken bones have healed now, but she can neither move nor speak. The London doctors have given up. They say it will take a miracle for her to recover. What about the Vaidya? What does he say? Nisha asked. He has given us some hope, but not much. He told us to massage the soles of Nanda's feet and her palms with a medicated oil. The Vaidya says we should keep watching for any change. Once there is a response, even a tiny flicker of movement, we can expect Nanda to recover. Amma, why did you spend so many days in Kerala? You should have taken the oil from the Vaidya and come home, Vimal said. The Vaidya first studied Nanda's condition. Then he started a course of treatment. His people used a variety of herbs and barks, some boiled in oil, while others ground to a paste. Vimal was happy that Amma was back. Now things would go back to how they were, but he was wrong. Amma had little time for him. Even though she engaged a woman to do the cooking, cleaning, and washing, she was busy the whole day with Nanda. She fed her a special diet mixture every 3 hours through a tube. Twice a day, she and Nisha gave Nanda a sponge bath and changed her clothes. In the mornings, she sat beside her and read verses from the Gita and the Ramayana. There was also the oil massage. As many times as possible, she rubbed a little oil into Nanda's soles and palms. Often she asked Vimal to sit with Nanda. Talk to Mummy. I'm sure she can hear. Sometimes she asked him to rub the oil into his mother's palms. Maybe your touch will make her well, she said. Vimal went into his mother's room whenever his grandmother called him, but he never stayed for long. The stiff form on the bed, his mother, made him uncomfortable. He had no memories of her that could help him overcome the strangeness he felt at seeing her, unmoving and silent. He also avoided rubbing the oil into his mother's palms. Amma, I don't like the smell of the herbal oil, he said, and escaped. Chapter 5. A Mother's Love. A month passed with Vimal mostly on his own. He resented the time that Amma spent with his mother. The feeling that his mother had never loved him grew stronger with each passing day. She never loved me, and now, because of her, Amma doesn't care for me, he thought. Once or twice, when he was angry, a picture flashed in his mind of his mother forcing his arms from around her neck and thrusting him at Amma. He remembered that his bad dreams were all about his mother leaving him and he running after her. One afternoon, Amma came out of his mother's room and said, Vimal, this evening we'll go to the Vigneshwara temple. I've asked the priest to arrange a special puja for your mother's recovery. Both of us and Ravi will go. Nisha will stay back to look after Nanda. Do you think Mummy will get well? Lord Vigneshwara will listen to our prayers, your prayers for your mother and mine, an old woman's prayers for her only child. Yes, Nanda will get well. I'm sure she will. Suddenly, in spite of himself, Vimal burst out, Mummy doesn't love me. Vimal, what a thing to say. It's true, Amma. All my friends live with their parents. Their parents love them so much that they don't send them away. But Mummy and Daddy left me behind. They didn't even call me for so many years. The first time they sent their photos was a month before the accident. Have you not been happy with me? I have, but I wish they loved me like other parents love their children. My friend Raju's uncle lives in London, and his children live with him. Mina's father did not take up a job overseas because he did not want to move the family to a new place. But my parents only took care of their jobs. Enough. Don't say anything more. For how long have you been troubling yourself with such thoughts? They are not true. Rajan and Nanda always put you first, Amma said. I'll tell you why they left you with me, why they didn't write or speak to you. You are only 9, still a child. I would rather you didn't know what problems they faced, but I will if it lightens your burden. When you were 2, your other grandmother passed away. Around the same time, Rajan was diagnosed with cancer. His insurance did not cover the treatment. Nanda had quit her job 3 months before you were born to take care of you. But when Rajan fell ill, she had to start working again. She took up 2 jobs and also took care of Rajan. Her working hours were such that she couldn't use daycare, and having a good full-time babysitter was beyond her. That's why she left you with me. She wanted you to grow up with love, the love that a paid caregiver was not likely to provide. You missed Nanda so much that you fell ill. The change was too sudden for you. Losing your grandmother and then being separated from your parents was shocking for you. You refused to eat and kept crying. Rajan had made videos of you and Nanda. We thought they would help, but when you saw them, you wanted Nanda and refused to be comforted. You longed for her and made yourself so ill that we were alarmed. Dr. Rao advised us not to remind you of your parents. It would only disturb you. I never played those videos again and also put away all their photo albums. I told Nanda not to send any more photos. She was heartbroken and worried that you wouldn't know her. But she agreed for your sake and asked that I keep her posted about you. She wanted to be a part of your life. I sent your photos to her regularly. Was that why you made me pose for so many pictures? Vimal asked. Amma nodded. I sent pictures and also wrote long letters. She knows, or knew before the paralysis, what your favorite food is, the names of your friends and teachers, and what you like to do. I remember Dr. Rao telling Ravi uncle about my illness when I was 2. 2 years later, they came for a quick visit. I was worried you would get upset when Nanda left again. That was why, even though it was hard, she kept you at a distance. Was Daddy cured by then? Vimal asked. He was better, but still under treatment. They wanted to come back when you were 6, but his doctor told him it was better if he came in for regular checkups for 2 more years. They changed their plans and came for a visit instead. You remember, don't you? They came when Ravi uncle got married. Nanda wanted to take you with her. She said if you adjusted well, you could continue to live with them. I suggested she wait for 2 years because she was still working full-time. You were better off with me than with a babysitter. That's what I thought. I also had a selfish reason. I wanted to keep you with me for as many years as possible." 2 years later, Rajan was completely cured. It seemed like everything was falling into place. He found a good job in Mumbai. They started sending photos and speaking to you on the telephone. Vimal was ashamed of his behavior. He understood the sacrifice his parents had made. They had given him a comfortable life with Amma and protected him from hardship. Amma inserted a pen drive into a TV port and came to sit beside Vimal. "This video is of you as a baby. We'll watch it together." The video showed Nanda carrying him around, feeding and dressing him. She often hugged and kissed him. His father was only in a few frames, but he also showered him with love. Vimal leaned forward when the scene shifted to the airport. He was clinging to Nanda, his arms around her neck. Amma was trying to take him from her, but he was screaming. Finally, Nanda forcibly removed his arms and thrust him at Amma. "I remember this," Vimal exclaimed. "How can I remember something that happened when I was a baby?" "It made a deep impression on your mind, that's why." Amma replayed the scene and paused it. "Look at Nanda's face when she is handing you over." Vimal stared at the image. His mother's face was a picture of agony. Tears streamed down her cheeks. Vimal started sobbing. Amma put her arm around him and wiped his tears. "Come, let's go to Nanda," she said. She took his hand and led him into the bedroom. "Nanda, Vimal is here." Chapter 6. A Son's Devotion. Vimal knelt beside the bed and softly called her. "Mummy? Mummy?" She remained still, and he slowly rested his face on her hand. It felt good, as if he was laying down a burden, the burden of feeling unloved. "Vimal, I'm almost sure Nanda can hear. See, she has tears in her eyes, maybe because she heard your voice. You didn't come to see her for 2 days. A tear trickled down and fell on the white pillowcase. Nanda closed her eyes, but the tears continued to fall. For the first time, Vimal gazed at his mother's paralyzed face. He wiped the tears with a tissue. "Is Mummy sleeping, Amma?" he asked. "The poor thing. She dozes off now and then. What else is there to do?" Nanda slowly opened her eyes and stared up at the ceiling. "Amma, Mummy can't move her face or mouth. How is she able to blink?" "Luckily, the optic nerves aren't damaged. That is a great blessing." Vimal kept looking at his mother. Her gaze was fixed on the ceiling as she slowly blinked. "Amma, I have an idea. You keep saying that Mummy can hear us. I found a way to test her hearing." "What do you want to do? We mustn't try anything without consulting a doctor." "We can try this, Amma," Vimal said. He leaned closer to Nanda. "Mummy, if you can hear me, please blink twice as fast as you can." And then he watched with bated breath. Nanda blinked once, and immediately a second time. Vimal sprang to his feet. "Mummy can hear! Mummy can hear!" Once again he leaned over the bed. "Mummy, I'll ask a question. If the answer is yes, blink once. If it's no, blink twice. Do you want to listen to music?" Nanda blinked twice. "Should I sit here?" he asked. Nanda blinked once. "See that, Amma? Mummy can answer us by blinking." "That's wonderful, but stop for now. We don't want to overtire her." Vimal agreed and picked up the small bottle into which his grandmother had poured some herbal oil. He took a drop and started rubbing it into Nanda's palm. "Amma, please tell me again why we should use the oil." It strengthens the nervous system and also works as a stimulant. A stimulant is something that quickens an action. You understand?" Vimal nodded, even though he didn't, and moved on to the other palm. The next morning onwards, he started waking up early and spending an hour in his mother's room before leaving for school. He even had his breakfast there. He made new codes. By blinking one or both eyes, Nanda could tell them whether she wanted to rest or listen to someone read or play music. Though her physical condition did not change, the codes were a great help in taking care of her. Vimal was a changed boy. He couldn't do enough for Nanda. He was always thinking of new ways to help and entertain her. He told her about school, where he was once again happy, and about his friends. One evening, he read out jokes from a book. They were so funny that they made everyone laugh. Suddenly, Ravi said, "Stop! I'm sure I saw Nanda's lips twitch. Vimal, keep reading." Vimal clutched the book with trembling hands and started reading. It was difficult because his eyes kept going to Nanda to see if there was any movement. And then they all saw the slight twitch on the right side of her lips. Vimal dropped the book and rushed to hug his mother. Amma left the room, reciting a prayer as she went to light a lamp in the puja room. The Vaidya in Kerala and the doctor in Jaipur, who was looking after Nanda, agreed that the twitch was a breakthrough. They said some nerves had been activated. In the coming months, Vimal and Amma continued the Vaidya's treatment. Amma also engaged a physiotherapist. Vimal learned the exercises and helped his mother do them. The road to recovery was slow. Sometimes there was no improvement for weeks, but they continued and encouraged Nanda. Vimal especially was tireless. Even when his grandmother sent him out to play with his friends, he was back in a short time. 2 years and 4 months after the accident, Nanda could move and also speak. Vimal went with her and his grandmother to Kerala to see the Vaidya. He examined Nanda and beamed. "I knew our ancient Ayurvedic medicine was the only hope." "The medicine," Amma said, and a son's devotion brought about this miracle. Nanda took Vimal's hand. "A son your father would have been proud of." Vimal's eyes filled with tears. He wished with all his heart that his father was with him. Just then, a warm breeze ruffled his hair. It caressed his cheek, and he felt better. The end. You have been listening to The Boy Who Was Left Behind by Geeta B. Reddy. The short chapter book series introduces children to different genres. It attempts to inculcate the love of reading in all children by encouraging reluctant readers to start reading. The books also help early readers and beginner readers to become advanced readers.